Here is my story. I don't know how to tell this story because I don't remember much from that day, so I will tell you what I remember. My mom and I would always go to Thornton's. At this gas station there was an Indian boy in his early 20s. Every time we went there we were greeted by him with a smile. He had that kind of smile that would just make you feel welcome. One night, as we were on our way home, we passed by the gas station, but we didn't stop by as we normally would and just went home. We found out the next day that very gas station attendant had died that very night. He got stabbed to death by an unknown killer. He has yet to be caught, but that's not the scary part. The scary part that kept going through my mind is it could have been me and my mom. If we stopped by like we normally do every night, we would have both been killed. It's a scary thought to think you would have been moments away from death. Thank God we didn't have to stop at that gas station, because if we did, our family would be attending our funeral. To the killer who killed my friend, let's not meet for your sake. Because if we do, then I will make sure you don't walk again. So, a little background before I get into it. I'm a 16-year-old girl. I'm a lesbian, and I was born and lived in Honduras. At the time of this story, I attended an American boarding school. Freshman year I had transferred schools, so making friends was hard. But in first and fourth period there was this regular looking girl, the type that always had a boyfriend and was always with her friends. Nothing much to see. We would never talk, but she would smile at me and I would just do the same at her. On my third day she just picked up my schedule and read it. Obviously, I thought it was strange and a little rude, but I didn't say anything until she asked, "You new here?" To which I replied with, "Yeah, I transferred schools." From there, it just sparked a conversation and the beginning of a friendship. We would talk and hang out in the cafeteria almost all the time, but she would never talk about herself. She would always ask something about me. When I tried asking about her, she would just turn it into a joke. She would say, "Why do you want to know? Are you a stalker?" Then she would just laugh, so I just brushed it off. My mom took me to the US in February, and I couldn't talk to her until September when school started again. So when I saw her, we picked back up again and exchanged phone numbers to keep in touch. One day, a few days before my 16th birthday, she said she liked me. I didn't even think before I said I liked her too, so we just started dating. I'm an awkward person, so when I didn't hold her hand, she would get angry. I was uncomfortable showing PDA in school, and she wouldn't talk to me until I apologized. Then she came to school panicking and told me she was pregnant. My initial reaction was to just stare because I knew she had ex-boyfriends and had sex with some of them, but I didn't think it was in the realm of possibility. But I snapped out of it and just told her, "I love you, and I won't leave you to deal with it alone." So I would ask her, "How are you doing? Are you eating healthy?" And it was like she had no idea what I was talking about until I said, "The baby?" And she would say, "Oh, we're doing fine thanks to you." We would fight about things a lot though. Almost every day we had an argument, especially about her seeing her ex-boyfriend. Eventually, at the end of November, I had enough. She would go out to parties. If I tried to talk her out of going, she'd turn off her phone and then call me crying at 3 a.m. telling me she drank or smoked and she was sorry. So the first time I broke up with her, she followed me after school and told me, "You promised not to leave me." And she was screaming at me and telling me, "You're making a huge mistake. You'll fucking regret this, bitch." and I caved and said I wouldn't be that stupid again, so we got back together. The second time, her friend had told me she was in the dean's office for fighting. I was concerned for her and the baby, so I skipped class to see her. Needless to say, I was livid to find out that she was actually there for sexual conduct with her ex-boyfriend. While I was walking away, she whispered, "I was never pregnant," and just smiled at me. She would call me non-stop from then on, at all hours, and I couldn't stop it because my phone can't block phone numbers. She would call and say Mike is really good in bed, more than you could have been, or "You're fucking worthless. I can't believe I dated you. I bet you miss me and need me." When I ignored her and all the texts and calls, she got angry. Angry to the point where she spread rumors about me or told my friends that I hated them. She would leave notes that were just a livid jumble of words, most along the lines of, "Fuck you and I'll kill you if I get the chance." I have anxiety, but I'm a tough girl, so it didn't really scare me until I found a knife in my locker. It wasn't a small one either. It was a huge hunting knife, like you have to open my locker to fit it inside. I was freaked out, but I didn't let it show. Logically, I knew I needed to call the police or someone, but at this point, rational thought was out the window. I just stared, dumbfounded. Then in the blink of an eye, I was on the floor with a throbbing pain in my head. I couldn't even see straight, and I felt like someone threw a brick at my head. My friends picked me up and helped me to the office. My friends had seen everything, and they filled out witness reports. From what they told me, my ex-girlfriend and her ex-boyfriend had planned to jump me when I opened my locker, when they thought I was alone. Her ex had punched me in the back of the head, but she saw that they were watching, so they both ran. The school police had immediately taken the knife that was in my locker and started looking for them. The school administrators had opened their lockers and found pages of almost incomprehensible letters to me. Her ex had written that he wanted to kill me for stealing her away from him, but she had written that she wanted to be with me. She loved me and wanted to make her mine. They have fucking rich families, so they both got parole and still attended the same school. Needless to say, I packed my stuff and now live in the States and have no plans to return to Honduras. The story I'm about to tell you is completely true because it happened 2 weeks ago. February 10th, 2016, Ash Wednesday. First, a backstory to help everyone understand. My dad was somewhat religious. He would often pray to God while sitting in the living room by himself. He also said that people who sinned would go to hell. He would often contradict that statement by saying there is no heaven or hell, no going up or down when you die. But one thing he was very adamant about was going to church on either Saturday or Sunday and on all holy days of obligation. To my dad, deliberately missing church on said days was a mortal sin. One of them, of course, being Ash Wednesday, a holy day of obligation every year. I work at a supermarket and my dad works there too. Me up front bagging groceries, my dad in the bakery. Like I said, it was Ash Wednesday, so I had to work until 5 p.m. Fortunately, Mass was at 7 p.m. My shift didn't start until 12, so I went to the wall calendar in the dining room to make sure it was actually a holy day. Sometimes I think a holy day will start a week later. I looked at the date. The 10th was definitely marked as Ash Wednesday. Near the bottom of the date was Holy Day of Obligation. After about an hour of boredom, I went to my bedroom to get my jacket. I took a quick look at the wall calendar I had. Same thing, Ash Wednesday, Holy Day of Obligation. I went to work, and 2 hours into my shift, I was asked to take a cart filled with abandoned groceries and put them back on the proper shelves. As I am walking past the bakery, I see my dad there, so I have a little talk with him. I asked him if he went to church yet, and he said no. I jokingly responded, "Sinner, today's a holy day of obligation." My dad's response came as a huge surprise for me. "Today's not a holy day of obligation." I told him it was, and he said that it wasn't. After a few more exchanges, I went back to putting the unwanted items back on the shelves. I became confused as to how he said it wasn't a holy day. When my shift ended, I drove home, and the first thing I did when I got into the house was look at the calendar on the dining room wall. I looked at the 10th of this month, and it still said Ash Wednesday, but below the date, Holy Day of Obligation had disappeared. I went to my bedroom confused when I looked at my calendar. The date read the same way. All it said was Ash Wednesday, no mention of it being a holy day at all. So let me start out by saying, I'm a 29-year-old woman, but at the time of this incident, I was 13. I did the one thing most teens would do at my age. I went out after 10 p.m. I wanted to see what I could find or do. My friend and I would meet up at a waypoint of mine and her home. At the time, I lived about 5 miles out of town and she lived in town. The two of us went to an old drain pipe and to the old cave mines by the hills. Living out in the woods and hills was always fun, but at night, it can be downright creepy. We had flashlights with us and did the best we could to stay only on the parts we knew best. After we got to the old cave, we sat down and started to make a campfire. For kids living in a little town, this was the "let's sneak out" thing to do. We sat there for a time just talking when we heard movement in the cave. I knew we had to be the only two in there. No other tracks or marks had been made to get up there. The good and bad thing about the cave, there was only one way in and out. Looking around, we saw nothing. "It was a bunny or something," my friend had said as we looked at one another. Just a bunny? I knew it could have been a mountain lion or a bear. I had lived there longer than her and knew the woods and hills by heart there. "Or a wolf," I said as I pulled out my shotgun from my bag. Yeah, a kid with a gun. That was something that most kids had there. She was not happy I had it, but I knew better. As I was going to have her flip on the flashlight, the sound of someone talking came to us. We just put out the fire and got the hell out of there. As we made our way down, I heard the voice get louder as we moved. Then someone screamed. As we climbed down, my hand went into something wet. At the time, I did not care. I just wanted to go home. We got back to my place and into my bedroom window. We flicked on my bedroom light. My sister looked up as she was in the same room as me. I looked down to see that I had blood all over my jeans and hands. It was what that wet stuff was. We had to let my mom know what was going on after that. She was mad but worried. She called my friend's mom and dad to let them know she was here. Then the cops came and I had to give them my bloody clothing. We found out later that someone had been camping up there and was killed by someone. About 3 years later, I looked into it more. There had been a crazy man living up there in some kind of cabin he made. The campers were too close to his cabin, so he tried getting them to run off. That didn't work, so he killed them and cut them up as if they were deer. I was happy we had moved by then, but I never did find out what or whose blood was on me. I don't remember the exact order of events in which this happened. All I ask is that you bear with me, as these accounts are totally true. I used to live in a very big house when I was a kid. Well, big in my standards. I was maybe 6 years old. A basement, 2 floors, and an attic with 2 separate rooms. One room I'll call the Atari room because my dad had an Atari in that room, and a toy room where we kept our toys. In the Atari room was a door that led to a long storage closet. I'll never understand why, but every time I opened that door, I felt like there was something extremely evil all the way in the back. But I'll get to that later. One summer morning, I was in the kitchen on the 2nd floor, and my dad had opened a window and locked it into place. The window had no screen attached, so I put my hands directly on the windowsill and kept them there. About 5 seconds later, the window came slamming down on my fingers. I cried and my dad lifted the window so I could get them out. My dad checked my hands first and saw they weren't badly injured or anything. He then checked the window. He had no clue how the window could have come down that fast or hard since he had secured it so tightly, and there was no breeze at all that day. Then there was an incident in my bedroom, also located on the 2nd floor. I shared the bedroom with my brother and sister. If you walked in, my sister's bed was pushed up against the left wall. My bed was in the middle and my brother's bed was up against the right wall. One night, I was fast asleep in bed. I'm not sure when I woke up, but it was still dark. I tried to turn to my right to get some sleep, but found I was unable to. I then tried laying on my left and found I couldn't budge. I tried switching between left and right, but found I was totally immobile. I then tried sitting straight up, but again, I couldn't move. At this point, I was scared. I began kicking and screaming for help. Eventually, my brother woke up, and when he asked what was wrong, I told him I couldn't move. My brother went over to the light switch. I was shocked to discover that somehow I was trapped underneath his bed, with my face between the metal frame of the bed and the wall. I had no clue how I could have gotten under there, since I never sleepwalk, and being a small boy, I wasn't strong enough to even lift his bed up. My brother tried to lift his bed to get me out, but found he couldn't, so he went to our parents and got our mom. Fortunately, she was able to lift the bed and I crawled out. Now for the attic. Like I stated previously, my dad had an Atari in the first room for us to play. In the Atari room, there was also the storage closet, which I was terrified of ever going into. Next to the door leading out of the Atari room, there was a table next to the wall and a mirror that was on the table that was leaning against the wall. When I was done playing, I walked past the table and suddenly the top of the mirror shot forward and hit me in the leg. I swear, I didn't bump the table at all and the mirror didn't slide off the table at all. The top of the mirror, which was propped up against the wall, simply lurched forward and hit me. I fell to the ground crying, and when my parents heard me, they came up and carried me downstairs. Another incident that occurred was when I got bored, so I went up to the Atari room to play a game. When I looked into the doorway, the door to the storage closet was open even though nobody had been upstairs. As soon as I entered the room, a loud, evil, booming laughter came from the storage closet. I never heard such a terrifying laugh in my life. I quickly turned around and ran downstairs and joined my family in the living room to watch TV instead. We eventually had to leave that house and move into a new one, because my dad discovered a neighbor broke into it and was stealing from us. Several years later, I overheard my dad and brother actually talking about strange occurrences that went on in that house. Some I never even heard of. But my dad did tell me one. The one that shocked me the most was what my half-sister told my dad. One day, she came to visit us, and when she went up to the attic, she saw a shadow right next to the door of the storage closet in the Atari room, and she swears the shadow was in the shape of the devil himself. Hey guys, thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Nightmare Army. I'm always looking for new soldiers in my Nightmare Nation. A big thank you to the subscribers for submitting their stories, and if you guys did submit me a story and I didn't get a chance to narrate it, do not worry, they're being saved for future videos, I promise you guys that. So, next Friday I was thinking about doing a creepypasta after my Tuesday collaboration videos, and I'm not really too big on the world of creepypastas. I mean, I did listen to a few of them back in the day before I started narrating, but I want you guys to pick the next creepypasta I narrate. Email me it, or, message me on Facebook about it, or send me a tweet about it. Whichever one works for you guys. So guys, as always, thank you all for watching, and just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.